Does MCU fatigue actually exist? I'm gonna answer that question for you in this video because why not? I'm bored, I want to talk about it, I want to talk about the MCU because for me personally, I am not interested in anything that they say they're releasing or that they're currently releasing. Apart from Spider-Man because it's Spider-Man, and the Fantastic Four I'm kinda interested in that, but that's just purely because it's something new, but I'm fairly certain it's gonna be the same story as like 7 movies. Okay, enough ranting. Reasons why fatigue might exist. Too much of the same thing. Since every MCU movie seems to be a one-to-one structure that might slightly be altered depending on the story, but never completely changed, it might lead to people feeling as if they are watching the same movie over and over again, which obviously is going to create fatigue. People are going to get bored of seeing the exact same thing over and over again because Marvel are too afraid to actually do different things. I'm going to get more on that as the video goes on, but it is true that whenever they do try and change stuff, people don't like it. So they do very minor alterations to the story, but they keep it fairly similar every film. If you watch every MCU film, you will see that 99% of them follow the same structure. Marvel are also guilty of rarely trying anything new, and when they do try something new, for example Iron Man 3, it is met with bad reviews and negative opinions from critics and the fan base, which gives them the impression that creating movies with a similar formula seems to be way more successful than actually trying something new. So at that point, why would they even bother trying to innovate? If the fans are going to complain every time something's not the same as the last movie, maybe Marvel decides to change something that they don't particularly agree with, and instead of trying to look at it as a creative change that you don't really like but you'll allow it and you'll support it because you like the MCU, they are straight to hating on it and complaining and just bitching all across social media. So Marvel see that and don't do it again, and then you're going to be complaining in a year's time when they release 2 more movies that follow the exact same structure as the other ones, and you wonder why. Now there's also a third reason, which is the complete lack of connectivity and reasons to actually watch each project now. Way too many characters or plot points are introduced at this point that either end up going absolutely nowhere or take way too long to be resolved, so people just end up forgetting about them. Now I have a few examples. The Celestial that spawned in the ocean in Eternals is finally making an appearance in the MCU in the next film, Captain America Brave New World, but who genuinely gives a fuck at this point? It's been like 4 years. You took way too long to do this, and I just want to add as well that Eternals is a movie that not everybody really liked, so people already didn't give a fuck about this aspect of the story, and now you're reintroducing it 4 years later. You may as well have just left it and forgot about it, to be honest. And then obviously the one I keep bringing up is Hulk's son in She-Hulk. I don't understand this. It still doesn't make any sense to me. When did he have this kid? Is it one of those pregnancies that because he's the Hulk he ages like 20 years in 1 year? Is it one of those? Because that's probably what the explanation is going to be, but I still don't understand how Bruce Banner had a son this whole time and no one said anything and he can turn into the Hulk. It's just stupid. Now there may be a reason or a world out there where superhero fatigue or MCU fatigue doesn't exist. And the main reason, and really the only reason, as to why it might not exist for some people out there is because of timing. What I mean by this is when you start to feel bored of something, it's usually a reflection of how long you've known about it. Someone who's been watching the MCU since Iron Man is most likely going to feel the effects of superhero fatigue much more than somebody who started watching the MCU after Endgame. They've been watching it for 2 decades straight. They are obviously going to feel it more than somebody who's only been watching for 4 years. This isn't to say that the MCU being boring is their fault for watching it since the beginning. It's just to say that some individuals may naturally become bored of something that's been a big part of their life for almost 2 decades at this point. And as I've said, opposed to somebody who's been watching it since Endgame, there really isn't a competition on who has been a fan longer. So does MCU fatigue actually exist? I would say it's a bit of both. I would say that people that have been watching it since the beginning are obviously going to naturally feel bored of this by now. Let's be real. It was way more exciting when you're first getting into it and every film didn't feel the exact same. But there are stuff like the Disney Plus shows and movies being way too similar now that I can understand would cause the fatigue. But that's not to say that the movies back then weren't similar as well. Most of the MCU films are similar, to be honest. It's just that when you first started watching the MCU, you first started watching it so know it didn't feel the same. Everything didn't feel the same because you hadn't been watching the MCU films for 20 years. You had just started, so it's obviously gonna feel different to anything you've watched before. But now you're finally in the loop and you're watching every MCU project, every MCU show, movie. Everything is starting to feel similar. And in the past, when Marvel have tried to do something different, it hasn't worked out, and they know for a fact that people are still gonna come to the movie. If they want positive reviews, they're just gonna do something similar to the last movie instead of trying to innovate and get hated on. Although now I do think that the same shit formula of funny jokes and all this crap is not really working anymore. Most of the Marvel movies that have come out since Endgame haven't done the best, especially considering what could possibly happen if they just write good stories, get a good director, get a good composer, and create a good movie. It's possible, but it's whether Marvel want to do it or not. Anyway, if you want to watch any more of my videos, there'll be a few on screen right here. Click the subscribe button if you want, leave a like if you want, and I'll see you in my next video.